Hello and welcome back to KXAN Plus. Thanks so much for joining us. Today we have a special segment that we don't really do weekly, but we do want to do it this month because it is Hispanic Heritage Month, and our team has been working so hard on getting some coverage of different Hispanic topics and individuals around the city and around Texas. But today with me to do this is our very own KXAN digital content producer, Erica Pauda. Erica, thanks for joining me. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. How are you?
Good. This is Erica's first time here in the KXAN Plus room, but you worked on a story for our special that aired this month, and it has to do with Hispanics or Latinos in the film industry. Tell us a little bit about why you decided to report on this and what brought you to the topic.
Well, it started when I went to the Paramount Theater downtown and I went to go watch a double film series for the Summer Film Series Festival. And it was hosted by director Robert Rodriguez, and he's very well known. You know, he's made a lot of iconic films like Desperado, El Mariachi, which, I thought it just took me on this journey of like really researching him and seeing, how he came up, from the top. Again, going back to El Mariachi, he filmed that on a $7,000 budget, which was pretty impressive because, it made millions, in the long run. And so that's kind of what got him started in the film industry. And so it just really got me thinking, how many of those storytellers, those filmmakers do we have here, in Central Texas? And so that just kind of put a spark in my brain, and then was just like, hey, you know what? I have this great idea. Why don't we talk about Latinos and the film industry?
Yeah, one of our goals this year for our Hispanic Heritage Month special was what does it mean to be Latino? And I feel like this story kind of embodied that question and showed us a lot about what it takes to be in a certain field and then also be a Latino and make sure that your culture is embraced or you're representing it correctly. What were some of the things that you learned about the film industry itself?
I think that the film industry itself, that anyone can do it if they really want to. And I think that's why these filmmakers are so successful, is because they were just like, you know what, I have this great idea and I'm going to tell this story because it's a story that people need to hear, which also people can resonate within the community, whether they're Latino or whether they're not Latino. And I think that that was important for them to talk about, and them also embracing their identity and finding ways to like put that into their work, like their family, their culture. And so I spoke with Miguel Alvarez, and he is a film advisor over at the University of Texas at Austin. And he really talked about that, about how culture and family and identity were really, and talking about the other filmmakers, Eliana Sosa, who also works for UT, and she's also a filmmaker and really embraces two cultures growing up near the border. And then we have Chelsea Hernandez, and she also talks about exploitation with immigrants who work in construction. So again, just a lot of themes here that all just kind of really was brought beautifully together, and it was unintentional, but as I went on this journey, it became very intentional.
Yeah, I like how you said it was unintentional because really that wasn't your goal at the beginning, and then the story kind of aligned so well. Your characters aligned so well. How was it gathering all of these interviewees into one schedule to get this story done and get this story written? What was it like? Because I know film directors and film producers are kind of hard to chase, right?
Right, they are. And I think that that's where we kind of align, is that we work on deadlines all the time. And I feel like they all understood the assignment, literally. Like I was just like, hey, I'm dropping this on you, and I have about a week to book these interviews. What say you, basically? And, they all got back to me within like a small amount of time. And, we're willing to go on camera. And again, I think that just goes back to them being filmmakers and them being comfortable on the camera, even though for the most part, they're going to be behind the camera. But, as you'll get to see, we do have some of the filmmakers who go on camera to tell their story.
Yeah, in fact, they came here to talk to you here in our KXAN offices or studio, and they were here on camera to talk to you. I thought that was really cool. Well, we do have a snippet of some of those interviews that you shot or that our team helped shoot, and I'm going to play those right now. We'll be right back.
I was just, this 12-year-old running around San Antonio. And I thought movies were made out in Hollywood, right, in the big cities. And up until then, I'd never even thought about making movies or telling stories. A lot of that had to do with not seeing people like me, or not seeing stories that that I felt that I could connect to on TV or at the movies. And so I didn't think that I had that I was important enough to tell those stories.
I think we're told, oh, that should be something that's shameful, or growing up working class. But honestly, I feel like those perspectives bring a certain empathy when you're dealing with all sorts of different people, especially in documentary, right? So I feel like that has really allowed me to really engage with someone and try my best to understand.
I am preserving our history, our stories through documentary film. And so now that's kind of my main purpose in making film, is making sure that these stories are told from our community. Even more so today, we really need to stand up and be our most authentic self, and not be scared of who we are, where we've come from, who our family is.
Just starting to really understand, how do you see the world, because that's what makes you an interesting filmmaker, is your perspective, and leaning into that and not shying away from that.
The stories that we put out there, and the images that we are beaming to audiences right around the world, those images and those stories matter, and they're powerful.
I like how he mentioned those images and those stories matter, and they're powerful. And that's why these individuals are part of this industry, because they know how powerful and how important it is to see yourself on the big screen. Let's kind of dive in one at a time with these filmmakers. First, you spoke with Miguel Alvarez. Tell me a little bit about him, what brought him into the film industry, and what he's doing now.
Well, so whenever I was on the search for filmmakers, I was like, you know what, UT, let's look up some people at UT. And I was looking up the advisors, and he just happened to come up, and I looked at his bio, and I was like, wow, he's doing work. He has current work, he's been nominated for Emmys, his producers, like his team. And so I was like, okay, well,
perfect.
Miguel Alvarez, would you like to do an interview? And so he said yes. And as you heard, like in the soundbite, he's really talking about, when he grew up back home, because he's from San Antonio originally, and how, he really didn't see Latino culture represented back then. It was underrepresented. And I kind of feel like, obviously, I resonate with that. And, he talked about like actors and directors who really inspired him. And there were so many directions that I could have gone with this story. And those were some of the things I did not get to incorporate, was like who some of his inspirations were, and kind of what really got him on that journey. But I think what's more important is that, he's done current work, with the photos that were being shown. This was at Troublemaker Studios.
Let me see if I can pull those up too.
Yeah, in East Austin. And, he said, while this was this was my film project, I want to say it was 95% of his crew and staff were students. And so they got to go on this journey with him, to see what it's like, and to be able to do something at Troublemaker Studios, that's no small feat. That's Robert Rodriguez's, that's his studio. And so to be able to film that there, this is called Piojo, by the way. This is a sci-fi story about something that the dad makes a decision with his son, and in the near future, it becomes a problem. He didn't really say how, but this is like somehow incorporating, Latin storytelling, but also with sci-fi and a little bit of fiction.
That's so funny, because Piojo means like lice, right?
Yes.
So how does that have to do with
I had so many questions, but I'm like, okay, if he's not going to reveal it, I know that he said that that's supposed to be coming out later in December. Now, I'm not sure exactly if it's going to like premiere. I mean, that might be worth, following up with him, checking in, like, seeing how that's going. So that's what he does, along with being a professor at UT in the radio, television, and film department. And again, he really just talked about telling his students why storytelling is important. And, while he understands and does incorporate, Latin themes into his film, he says he wants to tell it in a way that everybody can resonate with. And I feel like that's what's important, as a filmmaker is what I've learned. I'm not one, but I feel like that's what's important, is they want everyone to resonate with it. They want everyone to take something away from that.
To see themselves in their film or in the work that they put out, right? You also spoke with filmmaker Ileana Sosa, who focuses a lot on documentary film. Tell me a little bit about what got her into it, what inspired her to report or write on the certain topics that she's written about, and what did she have to say to you?
So she mainly talked about how her documentary, her storytelling is very intimate, and I definitely can attest to that, from what I saw. And it's her documentary was also shown or premiered at South by Southwest back in 2022. It's called What We Leave Behind. It was on Netflix recently. I don't believe it's there anymore, but it was about the journey of her late grandfather, who built houses growing up. And, he talked about how much there was a divide between the US and Mexico. And so as, his last project, he built a house in northern Mexico. And this is a film that she said that she did for 7 years. And so by the time that it actually came out, he had already passed away. And she was like, he did this as a way to kind of bring that divide together, to bring everyone to the other side of the border. And sadly, she says that no one lives there now. She was like, so what was that all for, And she was like, again, I just felt like it was a bigger story to talk about, how the border can divide, but not in the ways that you're thinking. It can divide family, and sometimes it's hard, to bring them back together. And again, she has a lot of that inspiration in her second documentary that she did, which is God Save Texas. And she is one of three filmmakers, and hers is the last one, and it's called La Frontera. So it's just talking about the border, and how really about the theme of in-betweenness and being in between both cultures, and how she really considers herself to be a fronteriza.
Yeah, what does that word mean?
So it means basically she's using the feminine form. So she's saying she's a border girl, she's both. And I really like how she talked about that as well in the documentary, and just saying, I've had to embrace both cultures. I don't feel like I belong to one or the other.
Yeah.
And so, she really talks a lot about that, and how she was like, sure, you can talk about why the border is the border, but why don't we talk about what's happening on the border? Or
what it is like to live on the border, but also have a separate part of your family living on the other side of the border and going back and forth, right? That's very that's a topic that not many people talk about, and it's awesome to see filmmakers like Ileana putting that to light. What did she say she heard from people after they watched that documentary? What were some of the comments she heard?
Well, she talked about the comments that people heard, that people said to her when they saw the What We Leave Behind documentary about her grandfather. She was like, these Western ranchers, people who I, wouldn't imagine would come up to me and said, wow, I loved your grandfather. And it was kind of more like they resonated with him and like what he was about, like as far as his family. And so again, that intimate storytelling really has brought in many different people of many different backgrounds and cultures who resonate with what she's putting out.
That's awesome. Well, we also have a third filmmaker that you spoke with, and you can see her on our screen right now, Chelsea Hernandez. Tell me about Chelsea.
So Chelsea, she was working at Austin PBS when she decided she wanted to do a documentary about exploitation with immigrants working in construction. And so that is it's called Building the American Dream. And again, it's spotlighting these construction workers. And in the synopsis, it talks about how she follows a few families and how some of these accidents, turn tragic. And really how these immigrant families are having to go on this journey to see basically how they can get justice for their loved one, who was out there working, in these, very hot conditions,
Texas heat,
or just unfortunately having an accident on the job, with, some type of construction work. And again, it's just really a testament to how, I think she wanted to talk about how, I don't think she meant it as privilege, but I think she meant it as, look, this is happening with the immigrant industry. And she felt like it was the story that she needed to tell. And she wants to continue to tell those stories. And what I really liked about the screening that we got, we got to go and get some video of the screening at Austin Film Society, Building the American Dream, and it was on Labor Day. And she was like, I think it was kind of beautiful that it landed on Labor Day because, everyone's coming into this cool theater, from like 100-degree heat. And it was really, again, just a testament to be able to show the pain that happens in there and how, you are able to come in and enjoy this cool air. And sometimes they're not because of their working conditions.
Yeah, you are sitting here watching a movie in AC with your popcorn on your lap while there's someone out there building I-35 under Texas heat. That's very inspirational. And what else did she say about what brought her into wanting to do film or wanting to work on sets and stuff like that?
Well, from what I do know, Chelsea actually grew up in TV. She said she's been on TV since she was about, I want to say, 8 to 10 years old. And her mom, I'm not sure exactly what her mom did, but she was able to kind of see her mom do that similar work. I believe she's also done some type of filming for the shows that used to be on KXAN. She talked a little bit about that, but we didn't get to go too much in depth with it. Like, I honestly think that could be its own story.
Yeah.
Just like her talking about how she used to be on KXAN, and which, that's why she was very quick to take the interview, because she was like, I have to show love to KXAN. So, she was really on board with doing this interview. And she said that she originally wanted to go to school for broadcast journalism. And she said she soon realized that she wanted to be behind the camera and she wanted to be calling the shots. Wow. And she has. She's working on something current, not too sure, except that's what her email says when I try to send her an email. So, she's out there, still doing the things. And she says that as a Latina filmmaker, she said it's very important to her to whom she's making these films with, down to her crew, down to whom she collaborates with, because she wants that vision to be clear, when she comes out with her films.
Clear and authentic, right? She wants that to be the environment and also what you get from the film when you're sitting there watching it.
Right. And it's coming to me now that she was talking about a little bit of her next film. I'm not sure if this is the current one she's working on, but she was wanting to talk about the Chicano movement, which I thought was also so fun and was so on point for what we were talking about. And the Chicano movement is also its own civil rights movement. So she felt like that was also another vision of a story to tell from a Latino perspective.
So when reading this article, our viewers are kind of going to get the gist of this type of filmmaking preserves history. Why is that?
I think because these stories can preserve what was happening at that point in time. Like, for instance, going back to Eliana, she talked about her grandfather, and he's passed away now, but everything that she talked about, everything that he talked about was something that, Latinos can resonate with, but, as well as everyone else. And it's important for those to be, it's something you can always go back to. It's something you can always reference and be able to tell those stories and be able to speak about those identities, and being a fronteriza, and seeing the wrong that's being done, and to workers who, this filmmaker said deserve better. So it's very interesting to see them all be able to tell these stories. And that Building the American Dream, that was a documentary she filmed like 10 years ago. And so she was like, I actually hadn't watched it, until that day. And she said that it hit very painfully when she watched it again.
Yeah, her work, her idea, all in front of her in the big screen. These three filmmakers have also received the AFS award. What was the award called?
Yeah, so it's the Austin Film Society award that it's like a grant that they get through the Austin Film Society, which shout out to Will Stefanski. I hope I said his last name correctly, but he's the one that who got me in touch with Eliana and Chelsea, who were both recipients. And then whenever I spoke with Miguel Alvarez, he also was a recipient, which is how he was able to film Piojo at Troublemaker Studios, because he was able to get the grant. So kind of full circle that they're all doing incredible things. They're all getting the funding to be able to tell these stories. And I don't doubt that they have more content coming out.
I'm sure that they do, especially at Troublemaker Studios. That's going to look great on the screen. Erica, After working on this story, after writing the article, after seeing it published, what do you think was your favorite part of working on this project?
I think that it was seeing their faces light up when they talked about something that they were passionate about. Miguel was just like, just get out there, just go out, do the story. Like he was just getting like really like vibrant and passionate about what he was talking about. And it was very infectious, and hearing all of them talk about why they got into filmmaking, again, just seeing how their face would light up. And I really think that's the stuff of interviews, is when you're interviewing someone who is passionate about what they're talking about. And it makes it easier to tell the story because you kind of already see the theme with what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's natural. It comes naturally, right? Miguel Alvarez, specifically in your story, I remember him talking about what he's doing now and how he's trying to work with students. What is his goal behind that?
So he said he feels it's important to work with the students to, again, just continue to tell them that it's important to tell their stories, no matter what the story is. He's just like, I believe, as a professor, and as a filmmaker as well, that it's important for them to tell their stories. And I tell them to continue. And that's when he got really passionate about what he was talking about. And as far as, what else he's working on, as far as I know, Piojo will be out later in the year. I would have to check in with him on that. I'm honestly not certain of when that will be or what other project he's currently working on.
I'm sure he hasn't announced that either, so
right,
it's okay. Right. So he's still working with students. He also brings them on set, right?
He does. He did that for this film. Now, I don't know that they get those opportunities
all the time.
Every semester. I think that the spring semester lucked out.
Yeah.
But that I'm not sure how he interacts with his students, except that he just wants to make sure that they embody that passion for storytelling.
Well, before we wrap up this stream, I do want to ask you, what is a message that you would send to our viewers, to our Latino viewers, our non-Latino viewers, about what it means to be Hispanic and in an industry just like this, filmmaking?
I think it's important to be who you are. Whether you come from that Latino background, you continue to honestly be passionate, going back to what these filmmakers are saying. Continue to be who you are, be authentic. Do the storytelling, no matter what anyone tells you, no matter if anyone says, well, you know what, I didn't like that. Or, hey, you know what, you could have tried harder. Hey, you do it anyway because you're doing it because you're passionate about it. It's your passion. So as long as you're doing those things authentically, I'd say
you're good.
You're good.
Yeah, and that goes for anything, right? Any certain field that you're in, any project that you're working on, just be yourself and you're good. Your article that you wrote on this story is on our website, KXAN.com. It can be found on the homepage. Tell me about it. What's in here that we didn't get to touch on?
Well, I feel like we talked about a lot, but you can actually, see the trailers that from Ileana's documentaries, give you a little bit more of an idea where she talks about that in-betweenness and talking about her late grandfather, and Chelsea, you get to hear a little bit more about her story and, how she wants to just continue to tell such important stories. So I think I'm just really just talking this up again because I feel like we covered so much.
We have the trailers again for all of those videos, some photos, and even some links to the radio and television and film department.
Yeah, just linking where they're from, giving them that credibility. And, I really just had so much fun with this. And again, I just feel like that message is just, be who you are. And it's like I was saying before I started this live, you got to do something that brings you joy at least once a day. So I'd say if you're doing that in your line of work, then I'd say your belly's full, your heart's full.
Yeah, then that's the point of it all, right?
Right.
Well, Erica, thanks so much for joining me. It was nice to have you here for your first time.
I know, thanks.
This story that aired on our KXAN newscast is also available for watching on our KXAN Plus app. That is free on any app store where you get your streams. It's also on our website, KXAN.com, where that article is that you can find on our homepage pretty easily. Erica, again, thanks so much for joining me, and I hope to see you back here.
All right. Bye-bye.